I never didn't believe in Bigfoot. I never believed in it, I didn't believe in it. I never gave it any thought.
They kept wood knocking back and forth to each other, and it was in a pattern.
Barn owls don't typically throw rocks.
I come across these tracks.
Sasquatch is still not on my mind.
All right, we're back here with Gary Brand. How's it going, Gary? We got Wild Trees on as the color man in the sidelines there.
Hello.
Yeah,
hello.
I appreciate it. Welcome.
You scared me. You dropped off right before this video started again.
I know. Wouldn't that be the way, right?
It wouldn't be the first time. I would just be a show with Wild Trees for half an hour. That's how that would work. Anyway, you are I usually don't do a lot of introduction here, but you're a podcaster, researcher, author, and story collector, and that is probably my favorite kind of guest. If you had a PhD in something, you'd probably be the all-star, new gold standard.
Oh, well, thanks. No, basically, it just started out that I was in the military for 20 years, and I noticed that everywhere I traveled to, every place has its own creature in the woods, or the house that you don't go into because there's ghosts, or people have seen things or mysteries. And I found that, it was a thrill of mine to collect their stories. So now I try and do retellings of these stories and create a few of my own.
Now, when you do the, your podcast is like basically little 30, 45 minute mini documentaries. How do you do your research for that? Like that format is something I'm trying to get into. And I'm even asking ChatGPT how to do it. But how do you start off? Like, what's your outline like for a mini documentary on like a local lake monster?
Well, basically what I do then is I pull the information that is available. Case in point, I recently wrote a book about the Ahool. And the person who saw it, Ernst Bartels, wrote an article with Ivan Sanderson. And they actually placed it in the Fate magazine. So what I do is I take that article, and then for me, I change the information into it to make it more of a story, a bedtime story, if you will. Mm-hmm. So the researching is try and collect as much information. I try and get at least 2 or 3 sources, because whatever's similar between the 3 is probably the most likely the true information on that. Mm-hmm. And then I basically outline it like you would writing any story. First, you describe the initial environment, then you add in the kicker that changes the lives of the main characters, and then you run them through the trials and then the resolution, how it changes them after the fact.
Oh, well,
so it's a simple formula.
Tell a little story there. So the Ahool, that's real? That's a real thing? South Africa, wherever it was?
Yeah. Ernst, okay. First off, if you Google Ahool, Ahool, you'll see information on it on the internet all over the place. The problem is that it's really short. It's like 2 paragraphs on it, and it's very limited. The only information that really goes in depth in it is what he wrote himself with Sanderson. Mm-hmm. And for him, it was an actual creature. He actually did have 2 sightings of it. What I did then is I took the information that he had and I totally fictionalized it and created my own book and horror story based on that.
I should have pulled a picture of that and put it up there, but the book's called Cry of the Ahool. There you go. I just watched your trailer for it again to refresh myself. What country was that in? Continent?
That is in Indonesia, basically Java Island.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact part of the story is that Java became a central point for England and the Dutch merchants who were, bringing things from the east, and so they found Java to be a great shipping port. The problem is that it has limited resources. So as more and more industries came in, it started pushing more and more of the natural world out, to the point that most of the forests and the mountain regions of Java Island are basically gone. So I thought, well, if they have this giant chimpanzees type bat creature, how would it react? And so that's where the story goes.
Now, have you ever looked into the ropin from Papua New Guinea?
Yes, very much. And the ropin is the ropin is a very similar, although the ropin is usually more pterodactyl. For a more similar creature to that would be the orang batty. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
Well, I just did an interview with the lady that wrote that book I just showed, Ropin Island.
Great.
Lewis Buchner. She did like a whole thing, basically your equivalent on Papua New Guinea, like the same kind of thing. I was like, holy crap!
Yeah,
pterosaurs, bat wings over the place here.
Well, I think we're getting into a phase where, how you go through the zombie craze, vampire craze. I think winged creatures are coming into the forefront of their own.
I think Dogman
have
would say
everything
not so fast.
What's that?
I said I think Dogman would say not so fast.
That's true. Dogman is very popular
now. But I hear what you're saying. I've gotten a lot of people talking about that kind of thing lately. Pterosaurs and giant bats and Jersey Devil.
Jersey Devil, Mothman, the Blackbird of Chernobyl, Chicago's Blackbird.
Gary, we'll say nice to meet you. First of all, I'm glad to be able to speak with you today. And
I'm glad you joined us.
Thank you. I like your shirt as well. That's a pretty cool looking Bigfoot.
Well, actually, I got this at 1 year ago yesterday, Ocala's Bigfoot conference, which is having its next one. It will be this Saturday that I'll be at.
Nice. Yeah, Bobby was asking me earlier if there's any Bigfoot people in my neck of the woods. I'm in Texas. And to answer you, Bobby, on the show is, there's every year there's a Texas Bigfoot conference, and it's usually pretty close to where I'm at, like a few hours.
I figured there had to be.
So I could hook up with them. And then I was going to ask you, Gary, does the lechuza from Latin America, does that fall into this crate of flying cryptids, or is that not included, do you think?
No, that's very much included. In fact, winged cryptids, if you wanted to have a whole category of those, like you would have Bigfoot and then you would have subgroups, winged cryptids kind of fall into giant bats, giant birds, and winged humanoids.
Mothman, baby.
Yeah, Mothman definitely falls into that.
King of the jungle.
Well, he's definitely he's got the most press right now.
My 4-year-old talks about Mothman at night. All because we watched there's a CW series with the redheaded lady from Stranger Things, and had a Mothman episode one night, and she just, can we watch Mothman? Like, there's only so much on Mothman, but yeah, I'll turn it back on.
Well, just conference. The festival that they have in Point Pleasant is growing. I saw it this year. It reached almost 400,000 people during the weekend. So
you're sticking the quarters in Mothman's butt crack.
Yeah. I don't know what the sculptor was thinking when he did that, but
they brag about that old Renaissance sculpture that's got the elbow, and it has like a tendon that pops out when you do this with your thumb or something, and it's like his attention to detail. So imagine the Mothman sculptor was just taking a nod from ancient Rome,
Oh yeah,
attention to the Mothman's butt crack.
Yeah, just don't think he expected people would be coin depositing it there.
But so perfectly.
Isn't it true that if you look at the original Point Pleasant Mothman accounts, it actually does not look like the statue?
Oh, true? Not even close. Yeah. A lot of the very first reports said that it was definitely a bird-like creature with a bill that came straight out, so kind of more like a pterodactyl type creature. And the first headlines for the appearance of the Mothman, they was written after the great race in Point Pleasant, basically said couple chased by giant bird monster. So it was described definitely as a giant bird-like creature first.
By the TNT plant.
Very much.
Now, I didn't know it till I talked to Miss Ashley Hilt, who is a like Mothman aficionado, and being where you're from, you probably heard of her, but she was talking about how I didn't know this because I was just kind of on the like 30,000 feet with Mothman, the Richard Gere movie, and a couple podcasts.
Gotcha.
But I didn't know that they didn't associate that bridge falling until the book got written, or the movie/book.
Well,
Mothman.
Yeah, what had happened is that the reports of seeing the Mothman on top of the Silver Bridge before this collapsed. Oh,
Mothman just did that.
yeah.
Mothman just
Want me
killed
to
Gary.
share the story. No, what had happened
That's going to be a
that
TikTok clip for sure.
what had happened is that the stories of him being on the bridge didn't occur until months afterwards. But this was because a lot of the sightings basically stopped right after that bridge. The people had a little bit more critical things to deal with than sightings of the Mothman.
Bigger fish to fry, as they say.
Very much so.
Yeah, you're not going to worry too much about that kind of thing. And also the Ingrid Cole, the alien. Ingrid Cole, that wasn't associated with Mothman until the movie.
Well, that's because John Keel, that's his favorite part is the alien aspect of Mothman. Well, not actually alien, but because he's more into the ultraverse, different dimensions more than outer space. And Indrid Cole was a big aspect of the stories that went around in Point Pleasant of Men in Black, trying to get everyone to be quiet about the Mothman.
And I'm going to buy that movie on Amazon when we get done with this. I've got a bootleg copy from like college, and I don't know where I got it. I want to watch it so bad after these podcasts sometimes. Were you going to say, Wild?
I'd say it's a good movie. It captures the spirit of the book, and it makes it contemporary for the time because it takes place in the 90s. Even now, that's like 30 years ago. But it does a contemporary version. The book is actually very good, very gripping. But I remember one little detail about the book that's not in the movie that was interesting was that talking about strange men that he reported, he said there was a lot of Asian-looking people there. And I always thought, wouldn't that be funny if it was just nothing extraordinary? That was just like a bunch of Asians were like vacationing at that time, and that's what was happening. And he was
there was like
wow,
a convention.
Yeah, there's so many Asians here. What does it mean?
It's just like bro. One of those, like they look back and forth. Man, have you noticed the amount of? And so I noticed you were up in Massillon, Ohio.
That's where I'm born and raised. Yes.
Do you know about the Massillon's own Bigfoot, the kid that dresses up that goes to the conventions?
Yes, and the mini Bigfoot. Yeah,
I've had her on here. Him and her, his mom.
Oh, good.
And when I saw Massillon, I said, I wonder if they know her. Her name's Holly, but she was. They got into it just haphazardly. That's a cool story. Like they went out to where the Minerva monster was, just down the road, and the kids like how a lot of little boys get obsessed with stuff, so they just get everything. So the kids playing this soundtrack of all the screams and howls, and they're going down the road there in the Minerva monster area. And she says, "Can you turn that off?" And he goes, "I haven't been playing it for 20 minutes." And they were hearing those sounds organically from the woods.
It's pretty great because Minerva is one of the best locations for actually getting responses to vocalizations.
Mm-hmm. And he said it was right there behind where that actual first Minerva monster sighting happened.
Is
the
Minerva monster a Bigfoot type creature?
It is.
Yes, it is. And actually, the neat thing about it is that based on the stories with the Minerva monster, it is the first time that they actually had sightings of a family group of Bigfoot.
Now, Ohio to me is very special for Bigfoot because I talked to this guy. He's a co-host on the Church of Mabus, which you can find on SoundCloud. His name is Jay. I forget his last name, but he told me like his firsthand experience. One of the most detailed, up-close Bigfoot sightings and he was a first-hand witness. Like, he saw the Bigfoot, he smelled it, he saw it left behind handprints, footprints, it damaged things. It was very crazy. Like, it's one of the most believable, and it happened like in a subdivision in Ohio. Now, I used Microsoft Flight Simulator, and I flew over. He gave me the address, and very clearly, it is in a subdivision, but very clearly, right behind the backyard where it happened, there's a little creek. So that creek was what it was using to travel. So that creek could have easily connected to some larger wilderness area. But yeah, that always impressed me. Like, that Ohio case is it's one of the strongest evidence of me for Bigfoot.
Those 3 states, Indiana, Ohio, and Illinois, all have that giant area where nothing is, and no one talks about it. Like, it's basically just it's an entire shape of like 3 states, and nothing's actually present in, just farms.
Well, Ohio does have a large population of cornfields, so a lot of which is an easy food source for any large hominids to exist in. In fact, Ohio kind of they termed their Bigfoot as the grass man. And that's because of a large number of grass huts that they've seen that are built out into the woodlands. Basically, imagine an igloo that's made out of sticks and then covered over with grass and mounds of sod. And that's kind of the structures that you're seeing being built out in the woodlands by unknown individuals.
See, that's the kind of thing I think somebody, maybe like Wild Trees, but just local, like universities would be all over. Like, there's huts just appearing in the woods, and it's not a centralized location. It's all over the state. Yeah,
but the thing is, to get an academic institution, you could do it, but you got to be so cagey. You got to be so walking on eggshells. So I would be like, hey, I would approach it as an anthropological problem. I would never say Bigfoot at all. I'd be like,
no,
local culture, local traditions, indigenous people are building these things. Let's study them. And then, the whole time you could be getting closer to the truth, but you just can't use that Bigfoot paranormal term. You would get some data out of it for sure.
I don't even think it's fair to even say it Bigfoot anymore. Honestly, I think it's something a lot bigger, and we think it's Bigfoot because somebody saw something that looked like it at one point.
Well, if you read a lot of the older newspapers and so forth, a lot of the documentation didn't even describe it as an ape-like creature. They didn't even call it Bigfoot or Sasquatch. They said the wild man. So wild man attack in Altman and wild man of Florida and so forth. It wasn't until we actually started studying gorillas that we noticed that there was more of a similarity with large apes, and realized that apes could get to that size, that we actually started terming it more of an ape man and less of a wild man.
I think it's the perfect time. I'm sorry, Bobby, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, one of my little hooks I was developing for my podcast, is it a hidden ape, or is it a hairy fairy? You make the choice.
I like that. I was going to say, I think it's the perfect time to talk about something. This is an old thing, hundreds of years old explanation for Bigfoot, but I just was familiar with it yesterday or 2 days ago, but I've been going down this rabbit hole, and it's perfect because you talked about how this, at first it was called the wild man, meaning human, right? So
yes.
Basically, there's this Hammerson Peterson, I think is his name. In the comments, I'll put the video that actually does this, but this is this great YouTube researcher for Canada. To sum it up, he talks about how the natives, their belief is that Bigfoot come from people that have been left in the woods and have gone feral, and that transforms them into Bigfoot. Now, that I did a little research, and it is true that pigs, they have a stealth gene where if they're in a farm and they get released into the wilderness, they will transform, and they will get hairy, and they will get tusked, and they will go over all these changes. The science seems to agree with that. Now, I was thinking this makes a lot of sense, and I was like, maybe it doesn't happen to all humans, because I remembered other research that said that some humans, more than others, have Neanderthal DNA in them. They have other relic species, more so than others. I was like, what if it's just those individuals that have the stealth genes because they have more blood? And what if a subset, at least, of Bigfoot is just people that have undergone this feral transformation like a pig would? That's really fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Florida has what's called the skunk ape. And one of the stories behind it is that when the settlers first started showing up in Florida, a lot of the Native American tribes would warn them of the shell people. And what they were was a ferocious tribe of Native Americans in Florida that would be recluse. You know, they didn't want to be seen, but if they were seen, they could be very violent, and they were very strong, very powerful. In fact, the documentation on them, because of their height and strength and everything, was kind of the thing that led Ponce de Leon to think that the Fountain of Youth was here in Florida, is because only a magical stream could create men the size of what he was being told. So that kind of ties into your story of, you know, feral or isolated human communities and their connections to wild men or Bigfoot stories.
Do you know if pigs can come back? I know.
I'm sorry?
I've known about the feral pig thing for, you know, years. I mean, because they're fun to hunt, and I used to in college. But I wonder if pigs can go back to domestic once they get the tusk and the hair. I've never asked that question before, because everybody always just smokes them before they do. But like when it comes, what they do in Texas is they'll catch them in those traps, like a big corral, and ship them off to farms, and they'll farm them and clean them up and send them out to slaughterhouses. I just wonder if they ever go back to being large whites or, you know, Hampshire pigs instead of just the big black ones they have out in the wild.
Well, they had to have at some point when we domesticated them in the first point. So I'm not sure how long of a process that would take.
Because it makes you wonder if, like, what Wild Trees is saying about like a feral person. Like, what if they came back in, and if it happens quicker, they got to turn into a Bigfoot on the weekends.
Well, okay. Let me just point this out to you then. We do have cases of children that were left out in the wild, basically raised by wolves. Mm-hmm. And there have been real documented cases of wolf boys and so forth. And they've been brought in, and they tried to basically domesticate them. But the problem is that they were past a point of development where they could learn or utilize human speech or some of the behaviors. So I guess it's kind of a timeline of when you're brought back in from a feral to a domesticated situation.
Yeah. Jodie Foster seems to be doing okay. When they brought her back out of the woods.
Yeah.
Have you ever had like a were you done with this hypothesis, Wild Trees? I don't want to.
Oh, I was going to say one last thing is that okay, what I like about this hypothesis is it explains a lot of things, like, okay, why, like, maybe the hair, we find the hair, we test it comes back as human. Well, it's because it is a human, you know, it's just expressing the stealth genes. And then also what's interesting is interbreeding. I could see how interbreeding would work between Bigfoot and humans. There's a lot of legends about them stealing our women, eating the children and killing the men. That would make sense. The other thing is, a way to follow up on this would be if you do find supposed Bigfoot hair, tested and assume it's going to be human, but then try to find the genes that are these ancient hominid genes in it to see if it's got a higher percentage. And then also another follow-up would be to see what populations of humans do have these hominid genes more in them, because like I said, I know the research is out there showing that some individuals have more early hominid genes, and so I think that's great to follow up. And then I was going to say, I think that's a really good question to follow up on the hog, to see how many times can you transition this hog transition to, like, it's born nice, turn it feral.
What if they just had one and just kept going back and forth, like in a high fence or something?
That sounds funny.
I feel like I know that somewhere deep down, but I can't because I know shit like that. But like, I don't know the other side of it, because every time anybody has experience with the feral pig, they're shooting it, and so they never give it a chance.
That reminds me of when I first joined the military. My first field exercise was in Grafenwehr, Germany, and it was kind of just in the back training area, the forest areas. And they warned me that whatever I do not leave the tent at night alone because of the pigs. Well, I'm from Ohio, so I was like, that's ridiculous. I'm used to dealing with pigs and so forth and that. Well, but I listened to them anyways. And the next morning when I got up and I did exit the tent, about 300 yards away was pretty much a 400-pound boar just rooting up the dirt. I mean, in huge shovelfuls. Mm-hmm. And then I realized that that's what they meant by pigs in Germany, because of so many feral pigs getting loose, and because Grafenwehr is actually the depot where they dispose of old and contaminated MREs. So you have all of these pigs that are getting loose from the farms, eating these high-calorie MREs, and of course, growing to this huge feral sizes.
The devil's raccoon.
Yeah.
The devil's trash panda. This 300-pound Graffin beer wild pig eating up chili mac. As far as the eye can see. What was I thinking here? I had a anthropologist on, Josh Lindell, Winnipeg. He did his thesis on Neanderthal teeth. Told me that if you're from Africa, you don't have Neanderthal genes. It's only Europeans and people who aren't from Africa because they never got down there. But he says he said everybody has some if they're not 100% African.
I'm not 100% sure because I've not done it, but does that 23andMe, because they check your backgrounds and so forth, would that tell you if you had any Neanderthal genes?
My cousin's got like 2%.
So it does tell you. Okay.
He's just a little bit, which explains his behavior, quite frankly.
That's really interesting because I've thought about like, I don't know if this is common knowledge, but like if you do a 23andMe, like that information automatically becomes available to the government. And so there's nothing wrong with the government. I'll say right now, I love the United States and I support every branch of the military. I love every part
when it's time for dental work, right?
But I wouldn't mind, since I'm a biologist, like, it's not going to be the easiest and cheapest thing, but I wouldn't mind doing it on my own, just doing my own 23andMe so I could, let's just say, have better control of that information. But then I could specialize it. I could do like maybe what I'm really looking for is all I care about is the Neanderthal stuff.
Yeah, your genetics might be more interesting than mine. Mine was all white people. It was very boring. No Neanderthal in me, though.
I haven't done it yet, so I honestly have no idea.
It's low percentages, but most people have it. I think he said it's rare for you not to. Could be speaking out of turn. I have to go look at that. He's coming back on because we're going to review the Netflix Neanderthal documentary series I just did, but I'll ask him then. But yeah, I think that's long and the short of it.
Okay.
I will say this reminds me of a really good movie, a really good horror movie with a young Christian Bale in it, and it's some other really good actors. And I forget what it's called. I don't know, Bobby, if you have internet access, if you could look up Christian Bale cannibal movie, Wendigo movie. It's such a good movie, young Christian Bale. But basically, it's about these it happened sometime after the Spanish-American War in the United States wilderness. And Christian Bale, he finds out that it's like a Native American thing. Like what happens in that movie is you have to become a cannibal, but then you do change. I think it's called Ravenous. That's what it's called, Ravenous. And so, yeah, the thing in that movie is you do change. You don't become a Bigfoot, but you do become like a Wendigo. But that one is caused by cannibalism. But it just reminds me, there's things you could do to make you transform.
Yeah, that's how you become a skinwalker.
Well, okay. First off, Wendigos is it's an Indian spirit of greed and so forth, and it basically can only possess you if you are cannibal and you take in the human meat. And then the spirit is what actually transforms you and basically turns you into something that can only crave on human meat. The reason that Wendigos are so hungry all the time is that no matter how much they eat, what happens is that it causes the spirit to grow. And the bigger it grows, even if it ate a lot, becomes nothing and so forth, it's always hungry. Now, skinwalkers, they transform basically because it is a Native American shaman ritual where they wear the cloak of a bear or the feathers of a bird and so forth, and they invoke the spirit of that animal. And that's what causes them to change their shape into those types of life forms.
Gotcha.
And then you got creatures like the Rougarou, which is basically a cursed being who turns into a wolf.
Why can't I find any of this on this thing? Kassoon was asking about a government facility in Texas where they had Bigfoot-like creatures. I don't know.
Yeah,
if he's talking about a military establishment, there is Brooke Army Medical Center, but it's not that they have Bigfoot. It's that it is a primate facility, and they do have retired chimpanzees and stuff, which got the rumor of having Bigfoot and large hominid creatures. but I'm not sure if he's talking about that installation or a different one.
Yeah, the military gets a bad rap for being a little bit more intelligent sometimes than everybody thinks they are. 'Cause
Yeah.
I don't know if like, they hear that they tell them what I'm like, I don't think they can keep a secret. Like, I guess if it was important enough, they could, but from what I've seen, I'm like, man, I don't know if they could have aliens and hide them.
No, there's no way. Someone would have said something.
I want them to. I mean, look at Bob Lazar, but like I lose a little faith sometime in how many holes there are in some of the procedures and things.
Agreed.
I was just going to go back to this Bigfoot thing. It just reminds me about other stories of humans transforming. Obviously, there's the vampire and werewolf stories. So it seems like a common thread. Now, I don't think people commonly think about this, even though it's 100 years old. People don't think of the Bigfoot as a werewolf type story, as a human transformation story. But it seems like there is a history of that being. So I don't know. It's interesting to me that there's these 3 stories that are old that talk about humans transforming physically into something grotesque.
Seems to be a lot of them, and even the Navajo guys who saw it happen in person, and they're not just they're actually police officers. I figure they're trustworthy, but like maybe that happens so much that to hear about it, the person's automatically waxed whenever they see it.
Yeah, it's actually a
Not so
taboo
much
for Native Americans or the Navajo to even mention the skinwalkers.
Mm-hmm. You can't say it around them. I had them on here and they start freaking out. Don't say it. Don't say it.
Yeah. It's kind of like the Voldemort thing on Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm. Thou shalt not say his name.
You know what that reminds me of? Because I thought about this, okay? This idea of not saying someone's name to invoke its wrath. It reminds me, there's a real world example of it. And so we had this guy, both Bobby and I have interviewed this guy named Robert Bitto, who studies folklore in Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
And he basically, I'll just kind of paraphrase what he said. Bobby asked him about the cartel. And then he said, like, listen, I don't want to talk a lot about the cartel because I don't want me to be delivered my parents' elderly heads in a box in the mail. Yeah, and that just reminds me of so that's an organization, like I've said it too much already, where people actively avoid even saying their name to invoke their wrath. And that just reminded me of a contemporary real world case that we could relate to about these people that don't want to say Sasquatch or Skinwalker's name.
I was just talking to him yesterday or 2 days ago. As a matter of fact, he didn't know about the Alabama black belt with the nutrient deposits. He goes, "Is this real?" Like, "Oh yeah, man, teach it in school." But I put his website on the screen there, Mexico Unexplained, Robert Bitto.
Okay.
Real cool cat. Highly recommend checking that out. I don't know how he's got like 1 million followers and don't know what he's like quietly famous. He's a cool dude. But
what's interesting though is that physicians and doctors have actually started looking at cases of basically Wendigoism and werewolfisms and so forth as a psychological condition because people believe it so much that they actually take on the features of what they believe is happening to them, such as a person who believes he's turning into a werewolf will start slouching down, flexing different parts of their bodies, and they actually do believe that they are transforming. So maybe that's just the first phase is you got to think like one of these before you actually start taking on the more physical traits.
Remember the movie Shift? What's it called? It was the sequel to Unbreakable. Is it called Switch?
Yeah. Wait, no, it wasn't Split. No, it wasn't Split.
Split.
It's Split. It's Split. I think it is Split.
Okay. Yeah, where he has the multiple personalities, and in one of them he actually takes on the supernatural powers because of it.
Mm-hmm.
The mind can do amazing things. I mean, you hear little old ladies who lift off cars off of their children. So,
and I don't know if we're ready for this right now because we're 35 minutes in. and people got jobs. But have you seen on the same token, the CIA just released documents about how thought can turn into a particle, like they
Yes.
just did, and that's insane because that just proves that manifestation and law of assumption are all true.
Well, okay. Here's another theory that might blow your mind is that Einstein states that energy cannot be destroyed. It has to be transferred into another form. So even when you die, your energy automatically has to transform into something else. It can't just disappear, all the brain waves and so forth. So yeah, just that alone proves that we do transform into different forms of energy. So people who can focus on that even before, that death and so forth, if they can gain that kind of control, transform their bioelectrical energy into, other forms of static or telepathy, telepathy or so forth.
Telepathy. I got hung up on that word one time. I couldn't say it for a week.
And the crazy thing about all these powers we're talking about, like, it seems fairly simple, maybe not so simple because you have to have the time to do it. But anybody can get these powers. It's just all about meditation. Now, of course, that's difficult now because our society pushes against meditation. It's all about being bombarded by television, video games, movies, everything. But I'm actually looking into starting like yoga classes or meditation classes because it undoubtedly has medical benefits. But really, truly, if you want to have some of these paranormal things or be more in touch with the invisible world, as you could say about the paranormal, meditation seems to be the answer to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at all the yogis, masters who can basically heal themselves because they can visualize their body part and basically like kill off cancer cells and, treat themselves without basically using psychic surgery.
There's something to that. I would love to master that. It's almost like
but I can't even master my phone. So how am I going to master myself?
Like I said, I think the solution, you have to have time and money. But for me, the solution is going to yoga and meditation classes. But of course, it takes time and dedicate. I have to dedicate that time, sacrifice that time and the money and the commitment. But that's what I found. And the other thing that this reminds me of, that it's a form of like weird magic, like we're talking about manifestation, that every medical doctor believes in, and they don't even bat an eye, but it's the wildest thing to me, which is the placebo effect. So every medical study takes into account to me. It's like they all agree, oh, yeah, your brain can heal you. Yeah, just because you believe it. And it's like, okay, we're just going to skip over this thing that you all believe. And every study takes into consideration. That sounds really weird.
That's not the first time I've heard that either. It's like that Leonardo DiCaprio meme. There it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
They state that a lot sometimes when you study the Neville Goddard law of assumption manifestation thing about how they just confess it in their literal tests. How you can make yourself do that. I've been practicing manifestation a lot lately, and I've had angel numbers for years, and there's a lot to them. And I didn't make an effort to do it, but I'm like, I'm just going to take advantage of this. And sure enough, it's like a muscle you can exercise.
Yeah,
things happen.
There's this PhD scientist who writes a lot of books, and I have one of his books, the audio and the written book, but one of his books, his name is Dean Radin, and he's got one book called Real Magic, but I think magic is spelled differently. But anyway, in that book, he basically, it tells you exactly how. It's a whole little ritual. It's not expensive. You just need paper and pen. But he basically tells you a whole magical ritual backed by science on how to manifest things and how to. Well, he describes like the different forms of magic. He says one form of magic is like manifestation. One of them is like divination or like talking to other beings. There's like 5 different forms of magic, but one of them is manifestation, and he gives like step-by-step instructions on how to do it. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's like scripting, like 369, the Tesla thing. You write your manifestation down 3 times in the morning, 6 times in the middle of the day, and 9 times at night.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. That's how he describes. He talks a lot about like putting your manifest. He's like, start off small. A lot of people that are like skeptics are like, oh, I'm going to manifest myself $1 million. Well, it's like, that's too big. He calls it like a Merlin level event. He's like, you got to start small. You got to be like, I'm going to manifest $5. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
the key is having to believe it, what you're doing. If you can't believe it, that's the hard part. But if you can make yourself do it, that's why you do things like you said, like $5. You can do that all day.
Well, it's the common psychological process of, looking in the mirror, telling yourself that, today's going to be a good day, getting yourself into that positive thinking, because then you'll allow positive things to happen to you.
It's true. I
Absolutely.
manifested a snake last weekend, and I'm not even joking.
What do you mean?
Well, when I was in first or second grade, I was about 8 or 9 years old, maybe younger. I was in my front yard, and this rat snake, an orange rat snake, tapped me on the foot. And I'm scared. I'm still scared of snakes. Back then, I was really scared. And I ran back in the house and started crying. I jumped on the back of the couch. It was a whole thing. But fast forward to last weekend, I'm at my parents' house, and I was walking on the side of my truck, and I was walking toward the same spot that happened. In my mind, I thought, just unsolicitedly, what if that snake is in the exact same spot? And I looked down, and the snake was in the exact same spot.
Really?
It wasn't a orange rat snake. It was a black rat snake. We call everything in Alabama that's not poisonous / venomous a rat snake. Yeah, it's just an old chicken snake. It was,
Gotcha.
and it was in the exact same spot. And then it climbed up the tree and tried to jump on my head.
Man, this thing had it out for you.
Yeah, my parents call him Mr. Slithers because he's always in the yard. He just kind of eats all the bugs and stuff and all the mice.
And you.
My dad carries him off every so often if he gets too close, and he comes right back.
I think a lot of people underestimate how curious different wildlife is with humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've noticed, I go to a state park almost every day, and I've noticed, like, rabbits, maybe you guys have seen this, they're very curious about humans. They'll jump right in front of you, they'll follow you. I had a egret, like a large bird in a subdivision, that would literally follow me around. And then sometimes they learned where I lived, and it would meet me in my front yard. And I think a simple explanation, I don't think it's unbelievable, is that they're just simply curious. They're just animals, and they're curious. And so I think that applies to, like, cryptids too, because, like, a lot of people are like, why do we always see Bigfoot, like, right when they're crossing the road? What are the odds? And I feel like maybe they do that on purpose. Like, they want to see you, maybe they're bored, or animals, I think, are just curious about humanity.
Well, I mean, if Bigfoot is a primate, I mean, that is the biggest definition of a primate, is that a hyperintelligence means curiosity. You just look at any of the chimpanzees, orangutans, apes, you put something in there, of course, their first instinct is to go and explore it. So why wouldn't that be the same for any, natural phenomenon out in the woods?
Now, have you had a eyes-on experience with a cryptid / Bigfoot?
No. Unfortunately, I try, and I have not had the luck. Basically, I have resolved myself to be. You ever watch those horror movies where the heroes have to go to the guy in the library, or the professor in the university and so forth, the guy who has the weird knowledge of obscure facts and so forth? That's me. I'm that guy in the movie. So I'm never going to be the hero, but I'll be the guy that goes, "Oh yeah, that's the Blackbird of Chernobyl," and he's basically the only way you can save yourself. I'm that guy in the movie.
And you got to clear off a table.
Yeah, and pull out
You're eating a sandwich. You're eating a sandwich for some reason
because I never leave the office.
Yeah, I call myself the combat field reporter of the high strangeness because I don't do anything. I'm always like just behind the team doing it. I don't care. I don't care anything about getting firsthand like bleeding edge experience. If I get some residual like sightings, I'm cool with it, but I'm not going in the.
Yeah, I'm basically the librarian. I'll show you how bad it is that with what I have. This is my black box of monsters.
Jesus Lord, is that a card catalog?
Yes. So you were asking how I come up with subjects for my
best friend.
Yeah, you ask how I come up with topics for my weekly shows. Each one of those cards is pretty much a topic that I can go over, and it's just little tidbits you pick up from people over the years. So yeah, man. I have a card catalog because I'm that bad of a cryptid librarian.
Oh my gosh, that's impressive. This podcast just took it up a notch. Well, let me take it. Let me steer to the left on this topic. Some of your shows are on urban legends, not cryptids, not
Exactly.
Not ghosts, but as far as urban legends go, which one do you think is the most true? With maybe it's true but misinterpreted, but which one do you think could be the most possibility to be true?
To be honest, if we're going to classify anything it's kind of borderline between being a story and being true, I would put it in with the inorganic materials having psychic abilities and so forth. Basically, crystals. I mean, you get anybody who has a quartz watch, you basically have a crystal in there that's vibrating at a frequency and conducting electricity that basically is perfectly timed to keep your watch going at a perfect pace. So why is it so hard to believe that, ancient civilizations used crystals and so forth as an energy source? So as far as, I'm sorry?
They use giant crystals too. So that's like,
yeah. So that's a whole field of study that we once probably had that we've basically lost the knowledge of. But we still have people who believe in, crystals have healing abilities. It's because they basically do transfer energies.
Yeah.
So it's partly true, and but just how true is it? So as far as urban legends, that's that.
Do you think it's one of those things that they're trying to make it seem crazy because it's true? Because the only people that get the publicity for crystals are those weird hippie chicks that have the little hand symbols. But like you just said, there's actually scientific evidence that they do something with a quartz watch.
Right. It's just not studied as well because they're in the hands of people who aren't taking them seriously. Case in point, marijuana. Okay, we've been treating marijuana as a drug that's, bad for you, gets you in trouble, basically gateways you to using harder and harder drugs. Totally ignoring the total medical effects that it has without being, having any of the side effects. No, we'd rather still use big pharmaceutical medications when THC does a lot of the exact same things, a lot safer. It's where the money is.
Let's not forget that big oil actually has a thumb on that too, because that hemp oil could solve a lot of that too.
Well, I mean, look at Nikola Tesla. A lot of his stuff we don't do because Edison, found ways to make money off of electricity, where Tesla was showing, well, why don't we do it this way? And everybody can have free electricity.
Pull it out of the air.
Yeah.
Now we're getting down. Now next thing you're going to say is Tartarian mud flood. And I'm going to have to call in sick to work tomorrow.
Okay.
That stuff gets me going because I'm like, they're hiding this stuff from us. There's a reason they cut the moon landing. There's a reason that NASA's looked at as like basically a glorified kids museum or kids project. It's, of course, I think there's a lot more sinister behind the scenes, but I think they're trying to keep NASA from being what it could be for sinister reasons.
Well, I think it's because they didn't realize how they could make money off of it. That's why with the Tesla and his space fleet, now that he's actually utilizing it, making profits out of it, basically launching 700 missions this year, he's showing that he can make it marketable. And once there's money involved, then all of a sudden doors open. So once he opens the door to, we can make money off of, landing on the moon and so forth. Once he can prove that there's money to be made, then I think a lot more emphasis will go on it.
It's kind of like that old thing you hear that no animal that tastes good ever goes extinct.
Exactly.
Like you never the chicken and the Wagyu cow is not going to go extinct anytime soon. They're not on the endangered species list.
Not even close.
It's like if you want to make an animal, help an animal, make it profitable, make it huntable, because people are going to keep them alive.
And I think that's why, creatures like Bigfoot and so forth don't get a lot of play. And I mean, what difference would it make for government if we prove that there's, ape-like creatures out in the woods? There's no benefit to the government for that.
Nope. A paradigm shift is their worst nightmare. Which is the weirdest thing about the alien thing. Because why are they trying to shift our paradigm? What benefit would they have for that? Because we just knew there was something bigger than them.
Yeah, but I mean, kind of just that's something that's just really hard to hide.
Well, yeah. Eventually, you can't unalive that many people in their hotel rooms or garages.
Exactly.
Something has to come out. Let me ask you this in that same vein of the paranormal. Bigfoot. Have you ever had a paranormal experience? Like, grew up in a haunted house or anything?
No, my wife has had quite a few. She's more into the ghost side, and in fact, we tag team with Feeling Paranormal here in Florida to a lot of the investigations they have into the haunted locations. Again, me being the librarian, I'm good at getting all the back data as to, okay, yeah, there is a ghost here because a child fell out of its window. And so, yeah, if that's what you're picking up, then this is the connection between the two. So I do a lot of the picking up the connections between what she's feeling and what the stories are in the books.
You do any boots on the ground research at all?
Oh yeah, all the time. Green Swamp. Basically, one of the things we just did is we went to Tacoma National Park, where they had the story of the carnivorous pink fog, which was an interesting one. But basically, the stories is that there would be a pink fog, just like you would have in a horror movie, that would basically dissolve animals right where they stood. So we went out in the early morning just to see if the sunlight would create such an effect.
Like The Mist?
Yeah.
Like the last scene in The Mist, and he just starts capping everybody, and it's the army.
Yeah, that is I can't watch that movie anymore, but just because of that.
That scene will just ruin your afternoon.
It will.
It's like, it's one of those things you show somebody. It's like whenever I tell somebody the Challenger astronauts didn't die in the explosions, they died on impact. And they're just like, what? Their whole day would be ruined.
Mm-hmm.
It's hilarious. But there's in Alabama, there's a thing called the Alabama White thing. And it's a shtick. And I was at a place where it's been spotted a lot, not too long ago, with somebody that spotted it there. And its shtick is it comes in on fog, and then appears as a big white, red eyes, and then does its mind heebie-jeebies and then disappears again. So the mist thing you got me reminded me of that.
Well, speaking of Alabama, there's a place that has Hugging Molly in Alabama, where basically it is a specter that will grab children out after dark, grab them and hug them, and basically scream in their ears. Well, what people don't realize is that community was basically started up by a large Irish community. A lot of Irish immigrants actually created that community. So did they bring a banshee with them to the United States? And basically now they have a banshee hugging Molly running around.
They got a bar in that town called Hugging Molly.
Yes, a little restaurant. That's awesome.
Have you been there?
Yes.
I don't even know.
That was not one of the other investigations I did. What's really weird? Oh, here's something that'll really blow your mind. There's people that I was talking to. There might actually be two spirits there. There is a woman in black who basically will kill you, and then there's Hugging Molly who basically just scares you away. So I was asking, well, what if Hugging Molly is a banshee? Maybe she's warning these kids to get away before the lady in black comes and gets them and takes them away. So a lot of their stories are saying, yeah, there's a ghost out there, but I'm thinking maybe there's two.
Man, that's way down there below Eufaula. I couldn't do that in a day. I'm going down to South Alabama in about 6 weeks, but I'm not going to get in that side of it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure since you've been there, you know about how the highways are on that part of the state. There's no easy way to get anywhere.
No.
It's hard enough to get to damn Auburn from here.
Okay.
280 is just red light after red light after red light. I don't even know why there's a university there.
No.
It's horrible.
I think that's the biggest hurdle to a lot of what I want to do, and I'm sure others want to do, is traveling around to all the locations. Basically, day jobs kind of interfere with the time you get to actually go out to all these locations.
I'm fighting hard to get out from under that. Like I've got, how the Oppenheimer did things like just Apollo 13. what can we make with this? What we got? I've got that kind of like murder board going on. Like, how
Oh,
can I
good.
make this happen? I can pay off the house. I get, I release this ebook. I can live for 5 years. My plan is to buy a Class C RV, go to Houston, pick up wild trees, and drive up to Minnesota and spend a week there. That's how you'll know I've made it when that happens.
We're kind of having the same philosophy because I keep looking at our house value, and if we sold our house, the profit that we would make off the house basically would buy a mobile home. So my wife and I keep saying, well, then, once your books start really taking off and you're actually making money with that in the military retirement, basically we just sell the house, buy an RV free and clear, and then we'll just go from spot to spot. I'll just pull a card out of my monster box, and that's where we'll head.
You get a raffle wheel.
I don't think there's enough spaces on a wheel for that.
You mean like the big cage, like a lottery, like you reach in and grab it.
Oh yeah, like the bingo.
Yeah. Well,
I was gonna ask you something, Gary, an idea I had about writing a book since your experience, and also I did want to mention, we could get to it a little bit later, but there were some questions. Let's see, Kason had a question about binaural beats for healing, and then I just want to address that really fast. I don't know of anything like that, but I just know that there's this declassified military project called, I don't know if it's Project Starlight or Stargate, but it's a CIA project, and it basically shows that you could transcend the universe. You could like have an out-of-body experience, and it involves listening to these different frequencies in your ears. So they're
Stargate's the men that stare at goats one. That's remote viewing.
Okay, it's something like that, and then maybe it is that one, but there's this whole they released all their documents. The CIA released all their documents. There was this guy who was tasked by, I think, a general. The general was like, hey, I task you with seeing if there's any validity to this weird research that has to do with remote viewing. And the guy took it seriously. He's like, here's my report, and he totally describes the whole process, and it does involve basically what it does is it involves listening to sounds, and what that does, along with meditation, it frees up the communication between your left and right hemisphere of your brain, which are normally separated. And that once you do that, that is the key to basically astral travel and stuff like that, remote viewing. So to answer your question, there could be something going on with sounds. I would look into that more.
Well, I do know because I was a veterinary technician with the military, and some of the equipment that we used was ultrasonics. Now, you know about ultrasounds. You send a sound wave in, and what bounces back lets you see just like an X-ray would, but in real time without the damage. Well, I know there's also been studies of using ultrasound to break up damaging tissue. So there has been some research. I don't know how far along it is, and it doesn't really tie into binaural beats, but there has been work done on ultrasonics used to repair damaged tissue. So maybe that is the first step of scientifically proving it.
Very good. And then his other question was, he says, I hear that Tesla's free electricity idea would fry all the electronics. So it's not practical. Any thoughts? And so just to say what I think, I haven't really heard, I'm not that familiar with Tesla and his ideas, but I could see how that could be a dangerous technology.
Yeah, but it might fry them when you first hook it up. But 10 years of engineering.
Exactly. I mean, if you look at a light bulb, Edison's light bulb going with a wire didn't last more than a minute because it would just burn out the filaments. But now we got light bulbs that last years. Tesla's process is that he was going to build giant towers and broadcast it just like we do now. Wi-Fi. What do you think Wi-Fi is? Wi-Fi is transmitting electrical impulses to your phones or to your tablets and so forth. And it's not frying your equipment now. So basically Wi-Fi is the first step of Tesla's free electricity idea.
Mm-hmm. And in my mind, in my mind, how it would work just from my general knowledge of electricity, why couldn't you pull it out of the air with your Tesla coil and put it through a what's the word? Capacitor. Yeah. Put it through a capacitor into a battery and store it, and then convert it to a AC and DC, however, as needed. I mean, not just, you wouldn't plug your open air Tesla coil to your laptop or anything. It'd be like a generator. You have to go through and clean it up.
See, and to be honest, I think what you're describing right there is the reason why we don't do it, is because you have all this electricity coming into your home.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's going to be doing something stupid.
Oh yeah, I mean you'd have to.
It's not equipment that's going to get fried; it's people that's going to get fried.
Well, eventually that would work itself out.
Then the gene pool.
Yeah, I mean, eventually it would stop. I think if it was I think there's something to be said for regulation and code, and I think if they would just let it happen, I don't know how many more elite cabals are going to have to control us for just like, dude, can we just do something for free? You're killing us.
Right.
How many cabals do you need? Everything's a damn cabal. You can't even buy like, menstrual cramp stuff, female stuff. It's just the same. That's kind of a weird example. I'm just saying, like, everything is controlled by something. Until I live with a bunch of women. That's the first place my mind went.
It's crazy because, like, I heard a term the other day, big candy.
Yeah.
So it's companies that control what kind of candies come out and, for Halloween and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Were you saying there are trees?
Yeah, I wanted to just to move on to my next one, unless you guys had anything else to say about Tesla.
No, we're just rambling.
Okay. So my next question is kind of selfish because it only really applies to me, but because you're an author, I was wondering, okay, so I have a YouTube channel and I've talked for like maybe dozens of hours about paranormal topics. And because I have a background as a wildlife biology, I talk a lot about science and my ideas connecting science to the paranormal. I've also done a lot of interviews. So there's all this content out there. So to write a book, I was thinking, what if I get a transcript of all that video stuff I've said, right? And I'd have to clean it up a little bit so there's no errors, right? Then I would feed all those transcripts to the latest ChatGPT, and I would say, I want to write a book with all this. Please pick out everything I've said and organize it into chapters, so it wouldn't write anything for me. I'm just like, look, just edit all this, basically. Edit everything I've said, all these hours of conversation into a book. What do you think about do you think this could be feasible? Okay.
In the middle. 30. These are 30 podcast episodes that I basically took out the chit chat part and just focused on the story part of what I was telling. So yeah, all I did is took 30 of my podcast episodes, took out, all the unnecessary things, and then rewrote it so that, made sense and, fixed any errors that I had beforehand. I didn't use ChatGPT, but that because I really didn't know much about it at the time. Basically, I already had the transcripts of what I was reading, so I just used that, and 30 episodes got turned into one book.
Okay, that's awesome.
Now you have my attention.
Yeah, there you go, Bobby.
Out there.
Bobby,
the way I look at it, all right, I write a new episode every week, and I'm doing the Hexam Heads for Monday's episode. And basically, the transcript of what I wrote, the story that I wrote, is 5,000 words. So basically, that's 5,000. If I did 30 chapters again, 30 times 5, I mean, you're looking at a 150,000 word book.
That's awesome. And I was going to ask you, so when you got your transcripts, did you have to do did you just grab your transcripts from YouTube, or where did you get your transcripts, and did you have to do cleanup on them? And
okay, what I did, I write before I speak. So basically, I write a script, and it was the script that I used. Now, yeah, you can use YouTube, does transcripts, and you can copy and paste, but it's a lot of work cleaning that up because it has all the time breaks in there.
Right. That's why I might have to use ChatGPT.
Right, because you're going to need something that can do the mundane, take out all of the garbage.
Right. Yeah, because you from YouTube you get a very raw version, so a lot of misspelling, misunderstanding.
Yeah.
But if
it's like talking to a telemarketer.
Right. Whereas mine was written before I do the episode, so mine was already cleaned up.
Yeah. See, my style is I usually have a very loose outline that I do write down, but it's only like 10 sentences, and then a lot of it is like, I guess, stream of consciousness or just memorize things. So that's why I would have to rely more heavy on the transcript.
Right.
But I still think it'd be less work than just sitting down and writing a book from scratch, just start to finish, because you've already done most of the writing, so to say.
Yeah.
Oh, I agree. And like I said, my Cry of the Ahool basically started as an outline for an episode that I was going to do. And, you know, like you said, 10 lines. And then it basically, I was like, well, there really isn't much here, you know, facts wise for a 40-minute episode. But what if I took the idea and basically used literary license and created a whole news story around that? So that's kind of where that came from. So you might, you know, have something there that doesn't fulfill a whole chapter of a book, but gives you an idea that you could expand into an actual fictional work. Because
Okay.
you look at it now, so many of the stories and movies that we have now are based on an urban legend or a story that someone else has already told.
Look at The Strangers. Just
Very much.
Somebody's door got knocked on when they were 10, and they just made a whole series out of it.
Since I've been working with AI, one thing that I do like that AI can do is that would be helpful if I feed it all my transcripts, I could say, it could do some higher level thing. And so I could ask it, not only can I say organize everything in chapters, but I could ask it, what are the top 10 biggest revelations from here? And it'll get the most like juiciest things. It'll, you know, Bobby, you put that board of, you put that picture from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia of Charlie
Yes.
with the board and all the, you know, the people have that board with all the ideas and the lines connecting them.
The murder board.
Well, you could feed ChatGPT all these random ideas and it will do all the connections for you. It'll be like, well, it turns out that this might actually be happening based on everything you've told me. So I like that aspect of it making connections that, I don't know, maybe it would take too much brain juice for me to do. Honestly, too much brain power.
Yeah, but okay. Don't sell yourself short, because you have something that the machine doesn't. You have human intuition. Basically, you have gut feelings on an opinion. The AI is going to take whole card facts. If it's going to say that, oh yeah, you wrote that 10,000 people saw this, and so it's going to say, okay, that must be true because 10,000 people saw it. You're gonna look at something and say, well, 10,000 people saw this, but 4 people saw this other thing, and I think there's a connection between the two. So don't sell yourself short that thinking that, you know, you have to depend on AI to find your revelations. You have gut feelings and instincts that'll pick up things as well.
That's true for sure. And then some other more practical questions. I was like, did you go the self-publishing route with your books?
Yeah, I'm not that well known yet. I know how to write, and people like what I write, but I have no marketing skills at all. I have no idea how to promote, you know, my book or to get it. You know, I've seen a bunch of YouTube videos and so forth of, hey, do this, do that. Yeah, you do that, but so is 10 million other people. So
So is every other aspiring author out there.
Right. So
Same
I'm
Google
just
search.
trying. That's why I appreciate you guys doing this. It gives me another opportunity to promote my stuff and try and reach more people. So so you kind of have to have multiple skills.
So you are self-publishing, or you're not
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was going to say, from my research, because I think Robert Bitto, that guy we talked about, he self-published all these books. He does coloring books. And I think that's the way to go financially, because I have a feeling, I'm not going to badmouth any of these press houses, the smaller ones, but I have a feeling they really rip you off. Because I've read people say like, oh, I had so many sales, but I got like a $50 check, you know. So those contracts, I think, could be pretty harsh. And self-publishing gives you more control of your own product, I think, and your profit.
Okay. What happens with a lot of these publishing services is that they basically say, oh, we're, you know, this is what we're going to sell your book for. But our part is that we're going to take this piece out for printing it, this piece out for editing it, even though you edited it yourself. And we're going to take this piece out for marketing. We're going to take this piece out for advertising. And it's like, but I did most of this myself.
Mm-hmm. Nickel and diamond you to death, man.
Yeah.
Really. And that's kind of what it is.
It's the reason you'll never get rich off like TikTok creator program or YouTube sales. It's just kind of a icing on the cake at best.
Right.
Do your own thing as a whole, and use that as like a, you know, just tip of the iceberg. Almost like a test bed.
Exactly. And honestly, that's kind of what my podcast does. Is It keeps me writing every week. So I keep learning something new about how I write and what entertains people and what puts them to sleep and so forth.
I know that since I've started doing short form religiously, my following's increased. I guess I'm getting the algorithm out there, and all the key terms kind of got
That's what you
a
have
little
to do.
footprint. I put out 2 a day. It's tough because some of it's trash, but I let ChatGPT write the description, and it just gets the keywords out there, and maybe nobody subscribes with the 10-second thing about an orangutan in Indonesia, but like it also recommends every other video that has the same keyword, and they go down a little rabbit hole. And I've seen it happen, like just videos I forgot I made. I'm like, who in the world who watched that? And that's why they subscribe.
Yeah. And that's what you want. You want to keep plugging away. Basically put out quality and people will come.
Mm-hmm. Or just put out a bunch of crap. They'll come on that too.
Sadly, that's kind of how the new generation's looking at it.
Mountains and mountains of shit. They'll just climb it. They'll think it's Everest. They'll put a flag on top of it.
Well, we like train wrecks.
Yeah. I've realized that I forgot what I was going to say. Damn, I did.
Speaking of train wrecks.
What was I going to say? I follow like the comedians always tell you don't buy into like an agency or anything. Like sell your license to your show. Like to keep it all for yourself. Like you'll make more in the long run.
That's why I'm going to keep plugging away with my books. In fact, I'm finished up my next one. I have some beta readers reading it now. So once I get the feedback from it, then it'll come out.
Yeah, the way you were describing writing your books is just taking, like Wild Tree said, just your stuff that you've already done and repurposing it. Most, people who aren't authors, let's say radio personalities that have their own show, for instance, they'll just take stories they've told and repurpose them and rehash it.
Well, that's what comedians do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they just take things that were funny that happened to them. They tell it and they get a reaction. So they just keep retelling it.
And they'll write a book about it. And
yeah.
And like every sitcom in the 90s was based on Tim Allen's act and Bill Burr's act. And it's just everything's just a cycle of Louis C.K. minus that one act. They didn't put that in the show. Let me we're kind of on the downhill slope, and I've kept you longer than you committed to, which is cool, but I didn't think you minded it.
I had a good time.
Yeah, but I wanted to ask you about Robert the Doll. You did a story on that. Has there been any repercussions? And Robert, I'm sorry I'm mentioning you here. I'm not taking your name in vain, Robert.
Yeah, you got it. You got to say that.
I'm just curious, Robert. I'm not making fun of you. I'm not going to put a picture of you up. Just thanks for letting us mention you, Robert. You're being a good sport. Thank you. But has there been any repercussions from you doing a story on Mr. Robert?
Yes. And Robert is the reason we haven't touched on any other cursed objects since then.
Jesus Christ.
Mainly, we did our first episode. We had like 500 followers within the first week. Okay. We did another episode, we were up to 750 followers. Then we decided, because we had just been there, we decided to do one on Robert the Doll. Got 50 people. Nobody listened to that episode. So we basically had to go, we had to apologize to Robert, and then we shifted the gears to keep completely away from cursed objects. And basically then our numbers started going back up again. But yeah, Robert did not want anyone talking about him. And so therefore that has been our worst and lowest played episode on our podcast.
Robert, I apologize for mentioning you on my podcast. You're a very interesting subject, and thank you for letting us talk to you, and we won't mention you again. Once again, Robert, we apologize. Okay. Now, jackalopes. You did something on jackalopes. Looking much happier. Dave Collier, something else. Wild Trees, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good.
Wendell says do more live shows. Yes, Wendell. I like live shows, but it's hard to do. I have ADHD really bad, and you can see because I'm bouncing back and forth here.
The neat thing about doing the jackalopes is because, yeah, not everything in my box is a hardcore, I believe, actually happened, paranormal event. Some of them are just great stories that tie into the paranormal. I mean, here we had, a creature that supposedly was a rabbit that grew antlers, and people swear they seen it, and people are convinced that there's no way impossible that you could have seen a rabbit with antlers like a reindeer. Well, it turns out you can, because there is a condition where they basically grow these bony nodules on their head that, if you see from a distance, could look like reindeer horns.
I was going to say, isn't there a disease like a growth that actually does have something similar?
Yeah, it doesn't grow as nice and neat as reindeer antlers, but I mean, it does create knots and stuff on their.
Yeah. I just remember the Dave Coulier, America's Funniest People, had the jackalope bit every once a week.
Mm-hmm.
And then, anytime you go to a taxidermy shop, they always have jackalopes they've made.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a big business, and it was just two kids who, were trying to con a general store manager, saying that they had hunted this creature down, but they would part with it if they gave him $2. And the guy knew it was a fake, but it was a great story.
No jackalope, man. It's like a part of pop culture you forget about. I saw that on there. Yeah, I wrote that down. But jackalope. I saw it as one of your things there. So last question before we go into the full blown descent, tray tables, upright. Do you think any of the lake monsters are real? Pick a lake monster. Do you think it's real?
Yes, I think they're identified. We have a lot of them, like Caddy up in Oregon and so forth, big giant clawed, and what they're describing, it probably isn't a plesiosaur or a monster, but there are creatures that can be similar and can be easily mistaken for them. Giant eels, oarfish, and to be quite honest, we've probably spent more time in space than we have at the bottom of the ocean. So who knows what's down there?
I really think some of them are obviously misidentified. Like somebody saw something fall out of a tree and thought, "Ooh, sea monster." I think some of it is cave systems. I think Nessie may be something that comes up from the ocean. You don't know what's down there.
There's the Altamaha, which is basically a river monster, and it's because I don't know if you're familiar with the Altamaha, but it's basically a river system, but it's kind of more of a delta. It has so many inlets and outlets that it'd be really easy for some kind of a creature to basically disappear into one of those outlets and, only appear every once in a while.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't think there's anything paranormal about them. Unless there is something paranormal about something else, then maybe one or two of them. But yeah, I like the lake monsters are fun because they could be the pictures they have is always like one thing. Like, what is that? It's like a snake that's on like coming up off a log, and oh, look at that, it's a monkey in the water. It's always some weird blurry picture.
Swimming underwater with his trunk out. Oh, it's a great fact for you, and it actually turned out to be. It blew my mind when I read this. You know what the number one killer is of moose?
Killer whales.
Yeah, that blew my mind when I read that. I'm like, what? How the hell?
Out there.
Yeah, well, and all these moose that are swimming across these gulfs and bays and so forth, getting gobbled up by orcas. Could you imagine seeing that? You're scuba diving, there's a moose coming by, and then all of a sudden a killer whale takes it.
Yeah, where's the GoPro footage, Mutual Omaha footage of that?
Yeah, I want to see that.
I'd watch that on a loop.
Did you know that
top water moose
killer whales
like a bass?
Killer whales and orcas are actually a type of dolphin. They're not a whale. Yeah. They're a type of dolphin. Very interesting.
It's a big old dolphin.
Before we win, I did want to encourage everybody to. Well, here's all the people I'm going to encourage: Prospecting USA, Hunting America's Treasure, Phyllis, John Lamb, Casson Lee, Jeff Yarrington, trying to shout out everybody. Of course, John P. Adventures. Everybody in the room, I really encourage you to just subscribe to my channel. You could go to Google or you could go to YouTube, type in biologist wild trees, and you will be taken to my YouTube page. And I would sure appreciate it if you subscribed.
I need to put it in the on the description. I wrote that description before I asked you if you wanted to come on or not. But yeah, you can't miss it. It's his logo is that one right there, the little fox. Isn't it still? Isn't that still your logo?
Yeah, it's not a dog man, it's a fox man.
Yeah, it's a fox. Vincent P. Richardson. Oh yeah. Well, all right, everybody. Gary, it's been an amazing show, and
Well, thank you for having me on. This is great.
I kind of want this team to happen about once a week now. It's like a dream team of guests. Dang. Would you be willing to co-host any, Gary?
All the time.
If I gave you some, man, like Wild Tree's like my favorite co-host because he's smarter
Like I
than me.
I have a whole box of topics. You name it, we can talk about it.
Hey, I'll put Wild Tree's YouTube link in the description just as soon as we're done. But you can't miss biologist Wild Trees.
We could alternate because I think we all have channels. We could all be guests on each other's.
Yeah, remember the good old days when we would just guest on each other's shows all the time?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. The best is yet to come, Bobby.
About got me.
Well, that's the neat thing about our field is that there's not a lot of cutthroat in it. I mean, because the general public already has a negative attitude towards people who study cryptids and the paranormal. So it's nice that the community of the actual creators and presenters basically support each other.
Yeah, and the people that are cutthroat don't last long.
Right.
And I've met a couple of people that want to make up rumors about people. I'm like, why would you say that? Like, also, Wild Trees' link is in the description as we speak. Just refresh your browser and go to the description.
Very cool.
Right, yep.
What's Gary's link too? Gary, what's your YouTube channel? We should.
It's in there.
Yeah, it's Within the Mist is our podcast and basically the core of everything that I do.
Gary's YouTube, Facebook, and Apple Podcast link are already in the description.
So everybody listening, definitely subscribe to Gary as well. For sure. Do it right now.
No excuse not to, Wendell. Looking at you, Wendell. You better subscribe.
And just as a heads up, the next week episode, the Hexam Head.
The Hexam Head. Sounds per voice. I'm gonna go get some Hexam Head, yo. I mean,
that's not that kind of a story, yo. That's an after dark episode.
That's on the Patreon.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for coming on, Wild Trees, for real. You really came in a clutch. Make me miss the old days.
Yeah, no problem, Bobby.
And don't forget to use his Cry of the Ahool book. There's a link to that, I believe, somewhere too. I have to look. But yeah, thanks everybody for watching. Thanks everybody for chatting us up. It's been fun, and this is not the last time you'll see this group. Peace out, everybody.
Before we go,
go.
One last question. We had Quantum USA said, "What is Wild Trees podcast?" So it's Biologist Wild Trees. You could just look that up on YouTube or Google.
It's in the description, Wendell.
Yeah, link is in description. Thank you, Wendell.
Wendell will follow you. You better watch out. He's very committed to the shows he watches. He comes to all our conventions and stuff. Met Wendell more than anybody else doing this. Anything else? We're good? Anybody? All right.
I'm good.
Peace out. Have a good week, everyone. See you. The audio version of this releases Wednesday, but that's the only thing else. See ya. Where's my peace sign? There we go. Peace out.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
I never didn't believe in Bigfoot. I never believed in it. I didn't believe in it. I never gave it any thought.
They kept wood knocking back and forth to each other, and it was in a pattern.
Barn owls don't typically throw rocks.
I come across these tracks.
Sasquatch is still not on my mind.